The situation in Niamey got messy fast last week on January 30th, 2026 precisely, where militants from the Islamic State launched a coordinated assault on Niger's main airport and a nearby airbase using a mix of motorcycles and drones. Now, while the military managed to fight them off, killing 20 attackers in the process, the damage was significant. Several commercial planes were shot up and 4 soldiers were wounded. ISIS was quick, to brag about the raid, framing it as a direct hit on the government's home turf to prove that they can strike anywhere. Now, the real kicker, though, is the political drama following the smoke, because even with ISIS taking the credit, Niger's leader, General Tchiani, is convinced that France and neighbouring countries like Benin and Côte d'Ivoire were the ones pulling the strings. So this has turned out, turned a security crisis into a massive diplomatic feud, leaving the African Union to play peacemaker while condemning the heinous violence. Now, we are joined at the moment by Beverly Ochieg, Senior Analyst, Control Risks, Global Risk Analysis Service in Dakar, Senegal. We also have Alexander von Rugen, Global Policy Analyst in Ontario, Canada. And Charles Onunaiju, Director of the Center for China Studies in Nigeria, Abuja. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for joining us. So let me begin quickly with Beverly. Let's have your thoughts, because General Tchiani has spent the last year turning Niamey into a military hub. Yet we have seen militants manage to reach the Abdourahamane International Airport on motorcycles and with drones. So in real terms, how did this happen? How does a sophisticated security apparatus allow a coordinated and surprise attack, as IS, calls it, to reach the heart of the capital?
I mean, yes, over the last couple of years, since the military coup took place in July 2023, there's been a massive change in the security environment in Niger, with militants moving more towards the western region of Tillaberi, which is where Niamey is. For the most part, it's been Islamic State, which has a bigger foothold in this region, but also activities by the Al-Qaeda rivals of Jenim. Just before this attack took place, there had been 2 previous incidents involving Jenim militants within a 20-kilometer radius of Niamey, and then increasingly IS militants allegedly infiltrating certain neighborhoods and then launching this assault. It's the very first of its kind by Islamic State since it declared presence 10 years ago. It shows that it's rapidly moving. It's targeting critical infrastructure, trying to undermine the military air defense systems. And if you notice, a lot of the damage targeted, whether it was aircraft, there were drones as well, which they claim to have targeted. The government itself has continued to maintain a quite strong posture, demonstrating that it does maintain capacity to be able to attack militants, having a response being supported by Russia. But of course, this tells us a different story. And by targeting or by accusing neighboring countries, it's one way of the Nigerian army, the military government, outsourcing some of that blame, but also demonstrating that there are various vulnerabilities where the military is struggling to juggle internal insurgency issues, as well as its relationship with regional countries.
All right. Now let's come to Alexander. Alex, this isn't, just a hit-or-run insurgency anymore. Does this suggest that the Islamic State in the Sahel has achieved a level of technical capability that the Nigerian military and also their Russian partners were not prepared for?
I think you mentioned sophisticated defense. What's your definition of sophisticated defense? If I want to keep a 2-year-old from going between rooms, I put up a gate. For him, that's sophisticated defense. You've got 31 insurgents. 20 of them are dead, 11 of them are captured. Special credit by the leader of the coup given to the Russian soldiers that were present, the mercenaries. They did their job. The whole incident took, from what I'm hearing, around 30 minutes. Yes, they targeted drones on the ground. They targeted 3 aircraft, actually. 2 were owned by Ethiopian Airways. The other one was a Côte d'Ivoire company. You've got to connect the dots here. Is this an orchestrated attack of magnitude? No. You've had 200 bandits attack villages in Nigeria. Here we have 31. Now, here's where we have to read between the lines. How did they get in? Well, they didn't come through the normal gates that are surveilled or the arteries. They came in through the expanded areas of the airfield. They knew where their targets were, which indicates maybe they had some intel on the ground that had reported that to them. There's a suspicion that the French are behind it. The French certainly own that kind of intel, having departed from Niger. I'm not going to say the French are behind it, but when certain facts present themselves and only certain people have access to certain data, you draw a conclusion. France did not leave Niger willingly, or Mali, or Burkina Faso. They were kicked out.
Yeah.
There's resentment towards them. They've been bullying. They did not defend the citizens of those Sahel countries as well as what they could have, and therefore they actually triggered a coup. Now, that coup has common enemies with Nigeria and other ECOWAS countries. Why are they not banding together, at least putting aside their political differences, to combat a common enemy? That's a logical approach, but that's not happening. Shared intel would also help that. Now, the loudest noise I hear going on right now is the lack of any comments about the Americans. They're busy in Nigeria. They're sharing intel. They're orchestrating attacks against jihadist-backed groups and also thugs, bandits, Boko Haram. What I'm hearing out of Nigeria, they're still, they recently kidnapped another village. They didn't see it coming. It's now being investigated and dealt with. But you're going to have this happen. America's forces in the Gulf of Guinea are superior to anyone else's. If their envoy has already quietly approached the Sahel states, there's a lot of chest beating going on. Okay. This is all going to play out. I haven't heard any input from Turkey yet, which also wants to get in on this action. They're supplying weapons. My first approach would be to see what was the origin of the weapons from the deceased attackers on this recent attack at the airport. Where did they come from? Who supplied them? Follow the money. Okay, follow the money. You'll find out who's behind the insurgency, the attack on the airport. Now, here's the other approach. It's 180 degrees, and I'm not saying this is the case, but was it staged? 31 assailants. Was it staged to show Niger is doing something? Niger does have defense. Yes, there were some damage on the ground. 4 soldiers got wounded, no death, and 20 assailants killed, and the balance of the 11 captured. Was that a sign of strength as to where Niger stands now? It could be interpreted as that.
All right, Alex, well, let's bring in Charles now. Charles, let's have your thoughts as well, because General Tchiani has pointed the finger directly at France, Benin, and Cote d'Ivoire as sponsors of this attack. And some say this is a legitimate national security concern, while some say, that the junta is probably using the tragedy to justify further isolation from its neighbors. What do you say?
It's really concerning and worrying that the Sahel region, along with adjacent states around it, including Nigeria, Benin Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, are deepening this gulf, this animosity. It is quite unfortunate, and what it simply means is that synergy to tackle the common challenge of terrorism, of extremism in the region will be dispatchated in these arguments and counter-arguments. While it is not simply easy to agree with General Tchiani, the point remains the Gulf within the region is widening, especially among the states, when we should be looking at synergy within the states in the region. and creating a further hole, creating further gap, and allowing for the extremists and the jihadists to operate. What it simply means is that if Tchiani had his way, like he promised, that both Talon in Benin and Patra in Ivory Coast will be hearing from him. If that is anything to go by, and finding also client jihadist groups or client terrorist groups to inflict similar embarrassment to his perceived adversary, that will only deepen the gulf within the region and create greater hole and deeper gaps for the terrorists to operate. That is a little bit concerning. Unfortunately, the regional organization ECOWAS has already broken with the Sahel state leaving, Benin Republic, with the Sahel state, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali leaving. And so this is quite concerning for the region. And it tells a lot to different levels, in my view, of the construction of states in the region.
Yeah.
You know, just recently in Nigeria, after almost more than 20 years of civil rule, the government owned up about a military coup. I am sure if the coupists have had their way, one of their mantras would be defeating terrorism, which was almost the reason given by other states in the region So the problem is how do the region find a common ground? How do they find common synergy? And we can say as Thanos forces, like Mr. Tchiani said, he paid a glowing tribute to Russia, even though he did not elaborate on the specific role of Russia in defeating that incursion. It simply means that the region will rely on more extra-African, extra-continental powers to stabilize it. And if this happens, then the scourge of the continent becoming a playground for extra-continental powers will become real, opening us to a new era of scramble. You know, this time seeking security partners outside the confines of the institutions within the region. And this, in my view, does not bode well for the region. So this is a wake-up call for regional organization, for major powers in the region like Nigeria.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So let's come back to Beverly because we're actually trying to manage time. Beverly, we know that Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso formed the alliance of Sahel states to guarantee collective security. But so far, we've seen, you know, a coup attempt in Burkina Faso, and now we're seeing this attack. Is the AES deliberately being targeted to break them up? Where was the collective support during this breach? Does this attack expose the AES as a political pact that lacks real-world military teeth?
There's a lot of speculation about whether there are attempts to sabotage the AES itself, but as it sees from its standpoint, neighboring countries and international powers are working towards undermining it. They have come together to consolidate political means, economic means, and security means primarily, which this attack took place at the headquarters of the AES forces, where they're supposed to be hosting the military troops, their air defense systems, and militants are aware of this, so they want to be able to target that, to be able to reduce its air defense capacity. But the political stability of the region overall will probably be one of the challenging issues grappling with the AES, whether it's consistent reports of military coups, not just Burkina Faso. Mali also had ones last year, close to in August last year. There'll be concerns such as this emanating in Niger because military governments themselves may not be able to maintain as much cohesion. So it's worth looking out for what the security trends will be, the political trends, what kind of external support they will have. As was pointed out by Charles, they will rely on Russia quite heavily because they did kick out French and foreign forces. They do have a fairly hostile stance against Western partners, even though right now we're seeing the US increasing its overtures in the region because the risk is not just isolated to the Sahel, it's an issue that will be at risk for the rest of the region, the coastal states, the border areas where Al-Qaeda militants, for instance, are already making inroads.
Okay, so let's have final thoughts from Alexander as well, on all of this. Following the attack of this scale in the capital, what are we expecting to see next?
Well, there's going to be an orchestrated plan from the military to deal with insurgencies in the Sahel and surrounding countries. A military plan without a plan is a plan to fail. Now, one thing we haven't mentioned here is the choke point through Benin. Now, Benin is being blamed. Benin is also the caretaker of a pipeline that controls all the oil coming out of Niger, about 100,000 barrels a day. It was built by the Chinese. The Benin receives approximately $31 million a year as a fee for transportation fee. They've got about 680 kilometers of a 2,000-kilometer pipeline. Maybe there's going to be a renegotiation on the table as to how much Benin receives in fees. Niger's landlocked, so are all the other Sahel countries. That's their vulnerability. There's a new Belt and Road initiative being offered from Morocco, a super port that's being built there, which will enhance the mineral exports of all the Sahel. It's in their best interest to keep good, as my friend said, good political alliances, whether they're a junta-run country or not. They have to prove themselves. I think Captain Traore is the biggest threat because he's actually doing something for his people. He's investing heavily in agriculture, making the country self-sustaining, which is a model for the rest of Africa. Yeah. Why being attacked? He's a threat to the institutionalized corruption that runs a lot of Africa.
So I'm being told that there's actually no time. I sincerely apologize. And we will definitely be having you guys again on the show, and we will be talking at length. Thank you so much, Beverly Ochieg, Senior Analyst, Control Risks Global Risk Analysis Service. We also had Alexander von Rugen, Global Policy Analyst, and also Charles Onunaiju, Director of the Center for China Studies in Nigeria. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady.